And joining us is Porter Davis. Porter Davis has a bachelor's degree, master's degree. He's done everything from own a radio station to be involved in his family food business. But you know what? His business today is freedom and liberty. And we're going to be talking about the Ron Paul campaign and the changes with this announced takeover of the Ron Paul campaign. Porter Davis, thank you so much for joining us in the Power Hour today.
Hey, Joyce, how are you?
I'm blessed, and I am so glad we have people like you out there that believe that freedom is everything, and if we let go of that, we've lost it all. There's some news, breaking news, that over the weekend there was a takeover of the Ron Paul campaign, a righteous mutiny, they're calling it. What do you know about this?
Well, I'm actually on the executive committee for the Lawyers for Ron Paul, and you know, we have come to the conclusion, which I came to back in March, that there are elements inside the campaign that are really not playing to win leadership. It's very obvious in many ways, and so we basically, by declaring this takeover of the campaign, what we're doing is signaling to the rest of the grassroots movement that, hey, folks, just as we have succeeded in our individual states as well as we have in spite of the national campaign and not because of it, we now have to step up at the national level, and if we're going to get Ron Paul the nomination, we have to forget the national campaign leadership that's raised the white flag, and we need to move forward and do what we can to get him the nomination. And the tip of this spear is the lawsuit, the civil rights lawsuit that has been filed last Monday in the Ninth Circuit Court that seeks injunctive relief from a federal judge to unbind all delegates to the National Convention in Tampa because of the gross, egregious instances of election fraud that have occurred at all levels and all aspects of this campaign.
You know, and now we're going to go more into the lawsuit and also about how one can become involved in the lawsuit as a plaintiff. But let me just add that there are many people that have been talking on the sidelines about the people involved in the Ron Paul campaign. They don't trust him. They feel like they're doing everything to keep the Ron Paul campaign from winning. And there are a lot of people that, without naming names, that sort of are being pointed at as maybe not being for the purpose of getting him elected. I mean, seriously. And so you've got that extent of people, like myself, who actually believe that, to the other extreme of people who don't even know that Ron Paul is still running in the race. So we've got quite a job ahead of us. So this organization, Lawyers for Ron Paul, the executive committee of Lawyers for Ron Paul, has now taken it upon themselves to say, and I like this statement, they are refusing to be sold downstream for political or monetary gain. The Ron Paul revolution is without reservation in it to win it. And I like the sound of that.
That's exactly what we are. I mean, in Oklahoma, it's a perfect example. We were moving along very well with the grassroots leadership that got involved in 2007 and 2008 and took seriously Dr. Paul's charge at the Rally for the Republic before the RNC, the Republican National Convention in Minneapolis 4 years ago. And he said, go back home, build the grassroots, get involved in the party, and build liberty. And that's what we did. But when it came time to get it, we could never get any national contact with the national campaign until January. Then they foisted the worst possible person on us against our vehement objections. And this guy proceeded to build a parallel organization and undercut everything we were doing. And I found similar instances in state after state after state. And it finally dawned on me that when I thought, well, what they're doing is hurting their reputation if their goal is to show how smart these politicos are to get Ron Paul the nomination. Then I thought, what if they're not trying to get him the nomination? What if they aren't playing this to win? What if they're actually throwing the ball game, so to speak, going through the motions that look like a campaign, but not taking those steps that are necessary? And then it just rushed on me like crazy, and I began to verify, asking the question, are they just totally incompetent, or is the campaign being sabotaged at the highest levels? And the evidence continues to build that it's actually both. They are incompetent in many ways, but so many things have happened that it has been sabotaged. In fact, Jesse Benton admitted back in, I think, his as early as March, if not earlier. They were actively cooperating with the RNC and the Romney campaign, so that they gave their RNC permission to start working with Romney as the presumed nominee. All the while, they were out raising money and saying, we're in it to win, and we've got to get delegates and go, go, go. So they're giving mixed signals. And even after Ron Paul said they were suspending the campaign, they had a money bomb. And many of the people that had not figured this out yet were giving money. They were deceiving people and raising money under false pretenses, really.
Well, there is a Ron Paul Liberty PAC that is the good guys, in my estimation. Those are the good guys, if people still want to donate, because this is not over. And Ron Paul came out, Dr. Paul came out this weekend with that YouTube saying, you know, I'm in this thing, and we're going to Tampa. And the day before the RNC in Tampa, they're going to have their usual, like they had planned for, big meeting that the RNC attempted to stop. And I think it's going to be huge. You don't even have to be a delegate to attend it. Anybody can attend that. And, boy, I'll tell you, that would be the place to meet some foxhole buddies there, I would think.
Betcha. I'll be there.
Oh, good, good. Attorney Richard Gilbert, though, has been working. I mean, you talk about somebody that's got guts. Attorney Richard Gilbert is going up against the Ron Paul, essentially, team or campaign, and also going up against the system by filing this lawsuit in the Ninth Circuit to try and bring attention to the election fraud. Now, it's still open that people can become a plaintiff in this case, and anybody who feels as though they have been involved in coercion, intimidation, threats, voter fraud, can participate in this by going to electionfraudremedy.com, electionfraudremedy.com. And you don't have to be a delegate to participate in this as a plaintiff, do you?
You don't have to be. Who are actively going after first are people who have been delegates to any of their county, district, or state conventions or the national convention, because that's just where we have the most information on people. And we have seen in state after state after state there have been all kinds of improprieties by the Republican Party in those states. We've seen every instance, starting with Iowa on, there have been instances of election fraud. And these all come under the purview. Election fraud comes under the purview of U.S. federal code, because once you get involved in an election for a president, federal law kicks in, and the election fraud in this country has been so widespread for so many years, we just take it as part of the environment we live in, like a fish takes water for granted. But we've looked at the law, and the law covers us and protects our civil rights. So we're going for an injunction from the federal judge to unbind all of the delegates in Tampa. And moreover, by filing this suit and becoming a plaintiff, each plaintiff actually gets litigation privileges, which protects them from the kind of goon squad tactics that we saw in Louisiana 2 weeks ago, where the newly elected chairman on the floor was actually wrestled out of the room to the floor and then out of the room by off-duty police and had his hip rebroken and had his fingers broken. And I was at the convention 4 years ago in Minneapolis, Joyce, and it was like living in a police state. There were 3 layers of visible security on the floor, and all the Ron Paul people were followed every place they went. They were watched while they were on the floor. We were searched numerous times. We had any kind of unauthorized signs taken from us and destroyed. And our goal right now, we're going to be asking for this federal judge to supply federal marshals on site to protect us from those kind of goon squad tactics.
Well, this is huge, and I don't know if the listeners are getting the importance of this, but this is like the first time that there has been a mutiny situation where we, the people, said, you are not trying to win this game. You are trying to drive a wedge between people. You are throwing the ball game, basically. And so now people have a chance to get involved. And to me, the spirit of the Ron Paul campaign, which, even if Ron Paul wasn't involved, this is a liberty campaign, a freedom campaign. This is the fact that we're not giving up. And I think people need to go back and relook at the Patriot movie, Braveheart. And some of these people that I've talked to, and I know that on the phone calls we had this weekend, there are people that are literally ready to put their life on the line for freedom. Now, that gets my attention, because these people are not just talking the talk. They're walking the walk.
Well, that's what we're doing, Joyce. I mean, I've got to tell you, I've been in the movement for over 40 years, more or less involvement. But I mean, I've been a state legislator, and just on and on and on. And the way I see this right now, we all know there's not really a dime's worth of difference between which criminal gang is in office at the federal level at a time. The Republicans and the Democrats have both sold us down the river in so many different ways. Obama's been Bush on steroids, and Romney has all of the Bush team in place. So we're going to get the reincarnation of Bush, but even worse. And they serve to neutralize the conservative opposition. That's what happened with Bush and then Obama neutralized the left-wing opposition against the war and so forth. But these are bad guys. I mean, these are the reptilians. These are the psychopaths, the sociopaths. They're in office, and they don't mind destroying countries, putting depleted uranium all over the world. They don't mind that half of our troops that have served in Afghanistan and Iraq are going to probably be sick with cancer and other diseases within 5 to 10 years. These are really bad people, and so we are putting our lives on the line, and I grapple with that all the time. But you know what? My little grandson, he would do it in a heartbeat. I told him I was telling my friends that he thinks he's Spider-Man. He said, "Papa, I am Spider-Man." and we're doing this for them just the same way. I'm not being grandiose about this, but this is the same kind of commitment that our forefathers, our founders did when we're like 1775, 1776 right now, and we are putting our lives and our futures on the line because we can see they are collapsing this country right now. And we have got to take whatever protections we have left and go forward. And that's why we are, number one, doing this lawsuit. And I urge everyone out there that has had any participation at all in the political process and felt like they have seen anything that has been coercion or intimidation or anything that has served to disenfranchise them and devalue their vote so that they have the ability to vote their conscience for president. And this is a widespread thing. Could be just as much as people saying, you guys don't belong in this party. Go home. Go join the Libertarians. Go be a Democrat. We had our governor tell those of us who booed her in the Oklahoma convention when she's called Romney the nominee, and he's not the official nominee. She called us Obama voters. That's intimidation. That's a that's coercion. I mean, it's in the broadest sense of the word, and that's what we're doing. And we have over 200 plaintiffs right now, but we're going for 2,000 to 3,000 because it's going to make a big difference to that judge when he sees people that do this. So we're asking people to go to electionfraudremedy.com. If they've experienced or witnessed any of this, sign up there and go enter your testimony and read carefully the instructions. And we urge you to join with us to be a plaintiff, because once you're a plaintiff in a federal lawsuit like this, you have federal protection from a federal judge. And if anybody then tries to intimidate or coerce you in any way, they come under federal law. And these are pretty powerful things because this is civil rights. These are laws that were set up originally to protect slaves when they were freed. Well, let's face it, half the people in this country today are paying taxes. They are tax slaves. The other half is living off the taxes, and since the government can't raise all the money in taxes they need, they borrow more than half the budget, and they and put the rest of us in debt servitude, and they destroy our currency and our economy at the same time. So this is the sign we've been waiting for, folks. This is, if you've been sitting on the sidelines wondering, well, I will act when I see the sign, the time is now. Well, this is the time. This is the time we have, and we have between now and the end of August we have 3 weeks to get the amended lawsuit in and to be heard by this judge. And so this is what we need people to do, is to join in this. And the other thing is we just need to get out of our minds that we need to, I hate to say it, but Ron Paul said, and I respect him and love him, and he's my hero, he said, wait for further instructions from the campaign. He does not realize, those of us who have talked about it, know he is so insulated from what's going on in the grassroots. He really doesn't realize how his own campaign has been sandbagged.
That's
by
right.
the people he relies on. And I don't say this. I didn't start with that conclusion. But I see lots of people who have been in denial when I first mentioned this in some of the Facebook groups and so forth. They accused me of being a traitor and whatnot. And I said, no, I love Ron Paul, but it's these people running the campaign that, they're putting out messages all the time. Well, this is all about positioning for Rand Paul in 2016. Folks, if we don't get our act together and take the freedom we have now, there is going to be no 2016.
That's right.
We
and
are
I think
close to the end.
It feels so good just to hear someone say it. There has been a horrible, horrible event take place within the Ron Paul campaign. All the people involved, well, we don't need to go in and mention who they are, but there's some bad things that have taken place in that campaign. And so now to hear somebody say, and I have so much respect for lawyers for Ron Paul for standing up and saying, no, there is a scam going on here that we do not want to be party to, and we are going to be the grassroots campaign now for Ron Paul. And the issue, again, I repeat, is not Ron Paul. The issue is freedom and liberty. I mean, this is a figure of a person who has done all the right things for 40 years, 30 or 40 years, and now it's time for us to pick up the gauntlet and run with it. I mean, it's time that we show Ron Paul what we can do, and now is the time more than ever for people to redouble, triple, quadruple their efforts. Get involved in any and every way you can. And one of the things you can do is just simply wear a Ron Paul sticker on your shirt or your lapel and let people know he's still out there. And they are afraid of him. When we come back, I want to ask Porter about how afraid well, let's just call them the bad guys are of us prevailing. Now, Porter Davis, who is on the executive committee for Lawyers for Ron Paul, the Romney people are worried. They're a whole lot more worried. They're like the duck on the pond, that looks great on top, but his feet are really moving fast underneath. The Romney people are concerned about Ron Paul at the convention, aren't they?
Well, of course they are, Joyce. There's evidence that they have been sending people around to every convention and to every election caucus, and they have been working to violate our civil voting rights because of the election law. They are leaving no stone unturned. It's been a full court press. They're extremely worried. Remember, they've got Karl Rove and the rest of the Bush team helping them out on this, and they want everything to be a grand coronation that has the appearance of total unity, and that is not going to happen because even if Ron Paul came out and said, "Folks, I want you to support Mitt Romney," we wouldn't do it. We're not going to do it.
No.
There's just no way we're going to do that. And we, each state has various laws and party rules that have been put in place to violate delegates' rights to vote their conscience. But we have the right that's very clear by Supreme Court decisions because of civil rights law to vote our conscience, and that's what we're working to preserve. And so all these goon tactics, the follow-up to this is going to be a RICO suit, a lawsuit for criminal conspiracy to violate our voting rights. And so, we have to fight fire with these guys. And this should have been done by the Ron Paul campaign initiating all this, but it wasn't done. This was offered to the Ron Paul campaign back in January, right after Iowa, when it became apparent what had happened. And the campaign showed no interest in this. That's just one tiny interest of the way they're throwing the ball game. The campaign should have been out after the first debate and said there's 8 candidates in this. They should have gotten 7 minutes each. Ron Paul got 70 seconds. We're not going to let the media do this. But they didn't say anything. And we all thought, well, we have this strategy, and Ron Paul's a gentleman, and he's going to be nice. But little did we know they were throwing the ball game, because simple things you and I would talk about and say we should have done aggressively to support the grassroots and to go after the media, they just didn't do.
Well, all I can say is it is such a catharsis. It is so good to hear you say those things. And by the way, he used the term "no stone unturned." We use that. We think of that as being the government. Whenever they have a cover-up, they say "no stone unturned." But no reflection on what he said, ladies and gentlemen, because this is all about the truth. It's all about uncovering the truth and letting people know that the campaign is on. Thank you, Porter Davis. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Joyce.